Valerie Martin, who's Finance Director at Autodesk. And today she will talk to us about finance soft skills optimization. So over to you, Valerie, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Hans. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I'm excited to talk about soft skills optimization. I hope everybody's staying healthy and safe, and hopefully, similar to Alistair, we could all meet one day. So let's get started. So why are we here today? So things are changing. So things are changing on how we're making decisions, how are we working with our trends and the future of works today, and how is it working in finance? So similar to what Alistair mentioned, the data is accessible more and more. Middle management having tools either with technology to self-serve and find insights. So it's interesting how everybody, there's more information that's being done and decisions are made quick on the spot. At the same time, if you look at how FP&A is positioned, we're pulled in different types of decision making now. We're pulled into other matrix that we're not used to do in traditional finance. We're pulled into topics that the board of directors are interested in. An example will be ESG, sustainability, looking at diversity, human capital and risk management, where FP&A has more and more an impact in actually influencing decisions. Now, if you look at our future of trends and work, so if you look at your talent pool, diversity is top of mind. So more there's diversity, more there's a competitive edge in each time we actually look at data and information. And therefore, everybody has a point of view, everybody has a different perspective and an opinion. So how do you work in an environment like that? It brings a lot of focus on soft skill. And FP&A has a key demand on these soft skills and how it exists on our roles today and how can we actually influence the skills of our roles tomorrow. And then if you look at finance in general, data actually is becoming more and more central. There's big data, different types of data, and we need to interpret those data. And then how do you use those type of roles that Hans mentioned, those 5 roles, and how can you actually make finance at the central of influencing those decisions, and how can we actually leverage soft skills? So this looks all pretty. So if we move to the next slide, I'll show you what this means for FP&A. So if you look at what it means for FP&A, and I'm looking at it 3 different lenses, I'm looking at how do we drive a culture of change, and how do we look at how does it look today? And when I mean about culture, I'm talking about behaviors. How do we reward our teams? What behaviors do we want to drive? Is it something about precision now, or do we just need to be accurate? Is it something that we need to spend our value in building tools versus driving automation? How do we look at our teams? Do we work in finance in different silos, or do we work on projects now across multiple teams and functions? And then how do we look at business results and what does results really mean? Then if you look at the lens of driving our talent, either existing pool or the ones that we hire, how do we recruit today? Do we look at the what versus the how? How do we drive our mindset change? It's not working harder, but it's more focused on different things or a different lens. And then how do we bring EQ or emotional intelligence or soft skills to the ground? And how do we drive that in our teams where traditional FP&A leaders, we weren't doing that? And last but not least is as leaders, how do we drive accountability, not only on our teams, but across the board and either at senior exec? And how do you build the trust and an importance of each role? All of those has an impact of driving decision and making finance one of the most important people in the room. So let's move to the next slide, and I'll show you how I've attempted of doing that and sharing tips and tricks that I've been experienced today at Autodesk. So if I look at culture change, one thing we try to do is really change a behavior guide where performance is drove to that, and it's driven through different behaviors. So finance, we're used to have precision, not make mistakes, everything has to be accurate, and that's how you drive performance. But how do you change an environment of curiosity where we need to be innovative, doing things differently with new tools, being adaptable where there's new metrics that we're actually learning and what it really means, and how can we be impactful and spend our time in the right ways? And that also goes on how we do things, like really working on one team. So it's not praising one individual in a competitive environment that usually are in finance. It's how can we work together and work on a project. So one thing that works is we actually push down a top-down behavior guide where performance is tied to it. We do reward and recognition on a quarterly basis where we show examples of how an employee was actually innovative or asked questions or being courageous, and really practicing that soft skills versus being necessarily on traditional performance where it's on precision and making sure everything's accurate to the penny. Another thing we've been doing is belonging workshops. So it's great in this environment of understanding the what, but how do we do things? And it's really like also how do you understand your team? So make sure you build that element of trust, but also with our stakeholders and our partners so they actually believe or actually trust the information we have. And it starts a lot of relationship, and building relationships starts with empathy and also understanding the trust. Another thing we actually on workshops, we're actually training skills about making decisions. Now that decision information is available very quickly and in different formats, well, how do we make decisions quicker to move forward? And usually it's like, it could be as simple as identifying who's making the decision, especially we're in a matrix organization, especially at Autodesk. And how do we make the decision? Is it based on consensus? That usually takes a lot of time. Or it's one person making a decision on an advice round. So a lot of understanding of how the decision is made is something that we do a lot. And another thing is actually on these workshops is feedback skills. So it's one thing of understanding how to make the decision and how to partner with people, but how do you receive feedback? Are people being defensive? How do we call them out? It's really practicing those soft skills and really understanding the tools you need when you know that something is happening. Now, moving out of the culture and really moving as talent, if you look at your talent pool, you have your existing pool and you have those that actually are hiring. We can hire like we hired in the past based on what the person studied and the curriculum and all the technical skills. A lot of it is they're going to understand of how to work, being adaptive, and really focus on the what and what's the culture they're going to add to your team versus being the same old. And then how are you going to bring a different point of view? Because you need to be covered on your blind spots. But working with these type of different personality or point of view, it brings a lot of practicing that soft skills to really get the most out of it. And then it's really a question of shifting your mindset. If I think about it in my career, when I started being a junior analyst, you move to a manager, then to a director, and moving up the chain, it's not necessarily what you know, is really how you do it, and it's a shift of mindset. So it's practicing the type of question where traditional finance would focus on the what, but it's really understanding those 5 whys and the curiosity on it. And really understanding the question, the so what, and it's always by building those relationships and how to be creative. So now if we move under, how do we do that as finance leaders in FP&A? So first of all, we need to break down silos. We need to remove this mindset of which team does what and competent, and all work together and increase communication. Really focus on accountability based on a project versus by team. And the conversion of communication is very key. You saw in Alistair's last slide how communication was a key learning. Well, we need to continue to over-communicate, and we need to do it with soft skills. And last but not least is how to create this psychology safety with our teams. Finance traditionally, if we make mistakes, it's a performance plan. But now how do we make them to encourage that mistakes are okay? What type of mistakes make sense? How do you actually learn from those mistakes, and what's the outcome that comes to it? It really takes a lot of the safety and workshops that we did. We did a workshop the other day and understand how we could actually speak up and bring more ideas. And it was interesting to see that people that were in the company for a long time was afraid of speaking up for X reason. And those that were new is because they were trying to figure out their place. And it could be as simple as a manager, instead of saying somebody okay, what do you think about that, to put them on the spot so they freeze, versus saying another question saying, well, what has been said that you haven't actually, that you think that could actually add to it, or we haven't spoke of? So there's kind of ways that you could do it where you could bring people where they're at or join them versus, where you're at and pull on them. And taking risk is key. So these are just a few examples that I've used in my organization, how to adapt soft skills. So hopefully this could be tips and tricks for you in your organization. Thank you.